From the Icons, a series bringing the cultural heroes of Trinidad and Tobago closer to you. Meet Torrence Mohammed. In this episode, we look at the influences and education that shaped his worldview and cultural vision.
That's me here. We're doing a Spanish dance in the oval there.
Torrence Mohammed hails from Princestown, where his maternal grandparents grew up. His parents lived in Airi village, and so did his paternal grandparents. He describes himself as a student of life, where he continues to receive his true education. We began by asking him what growing up was like in Princestown in the early 1930s.
I was the fourth of my parents' children, and they had decided for me to lodge with my grandparents for a while. And I stayed with them between the ages of 4 and 8. And the first school I went to was Princeton RC School. You know, originally Princeton was known as Savannah de Mission, the Mission. So the Indians used to say, in the best mission, they say Nissan. So when they go to Princeton, they used to say, I'm child and Nissan. Another significant thing too, my grandfather, my mother's father, was Muslim. And his wife, my mother's mother, was Hindu. And she came from Kerani. And my grandfather was also a butcher. And the amazing thing living with them, that was a tremendous experience. Because when she cooked, Hindus don't eat beef, so she cooked separately. And he would have his beef. But there was a kind of togetherness and understanding there. And they lived in an ordinary wooden house. And I shared the experience because she was a scrupulously clean woman. Illiterate, couldn't read. And in those days, we wash wares with fiber and ashes, what they call raki. So most of the things I learned, because man is a creature of habit, so you learn things from small. So while I was there at age 5, I attended the Princeton RC School, Roman Catholic school. And there where the system of teaching there, when they teach you, those teachers teach you every subject. From ABC, I went right up to second standard. When I was in introductory, I skipped to second standard. But in those days, when you finish introductory, you could read your papers. It's not to say that some of the children now can't do that. What impacted on me at that time too, at the end of the term in the RC school, they used to have terminal concerts, doing skits and things. And I used to be excited. I said, oh God, one day I must go on stage. So you see the influence. Princeton is a mixed community. If you know Princeton well, we have churches, Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, Wesleyan, you name it. So it's a real mixed community, and everybody there lived, in peace and harmony. So that was a very phenomenal thing.
So phenomenal was this harmony as a major influence in his life, he put it in this memorable way to our crew when he did not know our cameras were rolling.
Your life is about relationship,
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Baha'i, Orisha. There's one religion, and it's the religion of peace and love. Mm-hmm. And whether you're Negroid, Mongoloid, or Caucasoid, or you're fibroid, or
hemorrhoid.
There's one race. It's the human race.
Mr. Mohammed gives us more on the social, cultural, and international influences that led him to the arts.
But while I was going to school there, I also used to attend the cinema from age 5, So I learned quite a lot from cinema. I went to Indian movies and things. If I talk about movies like Random Harvest and The Rains Came and all those westerns and things, I used to be fascinated. And then you're talking about dance, with Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, and Cesar Romero, and George Raff. Every movie comedy used to do a rumba. And you go with Champion, and so you see the influence there. Also, in the heart of Princeton, you had a square. They call it a square, enclosed area, but it was really a triangle, but it's a square. And as a matter of fact, in that same triangle, where they first started to sell barra sandwich, which is now the famous doubles, which reached controversial proportion. There used to be a Salvation Army there, with the musical assam, a trap set, cymbals. Another thing that because of the number of ethnic influence, it's called San Fernando, Naparima, and then there's also called San Fernando, Pittsburgh. So when they come into San Fernando now, they used to say Hamjaila, Pittsburgh. Now San Fernando, between Princeton and San Fernando is roughly 8 miles. Now you have two routes, one on the Naparima Road and one on the eastern side, they call it the main road. And so when they come into San Fernando now, they'll say Hamjaila and Pittsburgh, French. You see the influence there. Now when they go into Port of Spain now, it's a little different. They say Hamjaila, Sahar. But Sahar in Hindustan is city. So you see how the thing. Now the other thing, between Irie Village and Princeton, you had the Margaretwood Estate. So the Indians would say, Margaretwood. So I used to think that Margaretwood was Hindustani. Lo and come to find out that Margaretwood was French, which means in spite of it all. You see how they learn in process, how if children spend time where they live in, the French, the bella stem from the French minuet. And look right now in San Fernando here. People don't know that there was a Scottish settlement in Coquille, because you have a place named Scotland Drive, Macintosh Street, Simpson Brown Terrace, and Birchwood, and all Scottish names, So it takes a little time to do a little research to find out why they call this place so. For instance, once I want to find out what Golconda and Faizabad, Golconda and Faizabad are two villages in India. And every street name or road has some significance, and it makes, historical, geographical. Because I keep saying, if we study the music and dance of Trinidad and Tobago and even the Caribbean, it could shed light on our historical background, geographical, spiritual, cultural, ethnological, and social, if you study the music and dance of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, after spending up to second standard, I came back to live with my parents in Irie Village, right? My father was an imam. He was an imam, a goldsmith, and a farmer. Started working in the fields, We had farmland, rice, corn, cane, vegetable garden, and we were surrounded by tropical fruits. We were 9 brothers and 3 sisters, 7 consecutive, because the mother kept looking for a daughter, then 3, and then 2 boys. So, on top of that, my father had 1 outsider's life. So he had 10 sons, and my mother had 9 sons. Right. Then I went to Princeton Irie Government School. These two primary schools had a very significant impact on my whole life, because they kind of teach. Because we learn in hygiene and nature study and civics. Spelling was a subject, handwriting was a subject, and you learn all the tropical diseases. If you ask her, for instance, the girl come in my office in green shoes and green purse and things. So I said, but your chlorophyll content must be very high. She didn't understand what I said. But why I say that, I'm trying to impress on you the kind of education you have. Because, as I told you, spelling was a subject, In second standard, I could have spelled diaphragm, diarrhea, pyorrhea, and hemorrhoids. Right? And you know all the counties, all the things. The children now don't know. I don't know what's happening. What is wrong with the thing? And the thing that also bothers me now, they hardly want to sing the anthem now. In those days, in the colonial days, you march with John Brown, baby, had a coal upon your chest, and you sing God Save the King, and with pride and thing, and then you hands out, hand thing, through book, and you move to, it was conducive to learning. Those teachers, the best teachers to me were the pupil teachers who were monitors. So they had to do part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, ACP, LCP, so they could have taught you all the subjects. So I drew from that. I reached 6th standard, and I took an entrance exam, and I went to and had my junior technical. I went to the first junior technical school in San Fernando, and most of my contemporaries became engineers because of the high standard. In Irie Village was formerly known as Naji Village. That is my father's grandfather. You know, after his indentureship, because he came here in 1863, and subsequently that he built the first mosque in Trinidad in 1863. That's in Irie Village. But it was named after him, the village was named after him, Naji Village. You know, when, unlike the African situation, you know, the Indian and Indian got land, and the families stick together, right? From a sociological perspective, they benefit more than, and that's another study. And when my indented great-grandfather came here with 3 wives, living in one house, they each had separate room. They also had a barrack, and up to when we were still living in Irie Village, the barracks, they used to rent the barracks to people. So while it was predominantly of estate environment, because Princestown, between Princestown and Irie Village, you had the Margaret Estate. It was predominantly Muslim and Hindu, with a few Afro living in between. And there was this solitary Baptist church, which was near the government school, near the cemetery. And they used to come in the Margaret Pond, where I learned to swim, in the estate pond, to baptize the followers. So you draw from that too. Also, during the Diwali season and thing, they would have the Ramdila. You know, we used to say Ramdila, but the right word is Ramlila, which is the mean epic. They also have Krishna Leela, but they more do Ramlila.
He flew around Lanka, flying across the sky, and he entered the kingdom of the King Ravan. Mahavir Swami ki! Raja Ravan ki! Yeah, Hanuman entering Lanka.
No, it is a big celebration now, right? So when you go there, festival dance, they used to do Jaru, the broom dance, Dagara, which is a strong male dance which came from South India. Then they used to do Kusti, which is an Indian wrestling, but they used to do that in dance. Then they had Gatka and things like that.
Stick fighting. Ritual is blended with sport in a fierce competition.
What is a little disheartening now, while you have about nearly 200 Indian dance groups in Trinidad, they do Bollywood dance, nothing wrong with that. They do film dance, nothing wrong with that. They do some classical, they do some Bharatnatyam, some Kathak, some Kuchipudi, some Orisi and things like that. But they don't do the local Trinidad folk dances. The same way in the African situation now, they run away from the traditional.
So from the traditional to the contemporary, Torrence Mohammed readily shares his wisdom in a serious but light-hearted way. On the road to personal and artistic development, he firmly believes there's really only one way to make dreams come true.
There are people who have been dreaming for years,
Yes.
but they're still sleeping. Wake up!
Join us for another episode of From the Icons, brought to you by the Remember When Institute of the Culture Division of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.